Hey, I'm just setting up here, kind of. I noticed my. Hmm. Sometimes the computer will start running a little slow, and I'm not exactly sure why. Um, Sometimes just kind of wait it out. Or by computer, I mean specifically um, Clip Studio. Um, all right. Anyway, so what we're gonna do here is gonna lay out a page from Murder Inc. Let's um, bring this over for you. This is the script. We're going to do page 12 and 13, which is a double page spread, which I thought would be interesting to show how you handle a double page spread, which is different every time, depending on the scene. Um, I mean, I guess it's not different every time, really, because fight scenes have a certain rhythm to them. There's a certain way that that's going to be laid out versus a very talky scene, which is what this is. Two people in a very dark room speaking to each other. So on these kind of pages, I rely largely on acting. The characters acting. Um, uh, Versus and also with Murder Inc. I don't do my crazy layouts like I do on Cave Carson. I will do a crazy layout if it's really called for, but this particular scene is pretty quiet, so we're not going to go nuts. So this is going to be mostly about lighting and character acting. So let's read. So one of the first things I do before I even really read the page, and I've read the script already and stuff this time, is I do a panel count because before I really even think about the page, the first thing I have to have in my head isn't what kind of cool shot I want to do or anything pre-calculated. I really have to look at the page and then uh, yeah, do the page count, take a mental what's the word I'm looking for? Just a mental checklist of how much dialogue is on the page and which panels have the most dialogue. That gives me an idea of what kind of space I'm going to need to lay out. So looking down here, we've got 11 panels, which is tricky because it's an odd number. And typically what I do on a double page spread um, is I usually cut the page into a top half and a bottom half. And so it would be like 5 across the bottom and 6 across, or 5 across the top, 6 across the bottom, or vice versa. I mean, you can split it up into any way you want, but taking a quick perusal at the dialogue without even rereading it here, I don't see any giant blocks of dialogue. Panel 2 has the most dialogue on the page, which means to me, unless something crazy happens on this page, which I don't believe anything crazy does. It's all sort of back and forth, actor to actor kind of a scene. Panels are going to be relatively equal in size. That's the way I roll with these things, especially on Murder Inc. It's more about like pacing and beats as opposed to page layouts, if that makes any sense. So Murder is more little more stillness, punctuated by action scenes, but mostly it's very still. So I want to keep things even and balanced for the most part. By things I mean the panels and pacing. So let's read this real quick, knowing that the page is going to be laid out relatively even paced. That's based on the amount of panels, the kind of scene that it is, and the amount of dialogue that we know is on the page. So I should have pulled up the other pages. So these pages are a continuation of the scene. Sorry, second, there we go. So this is hospital scene at the very beginning, and it's purposefully lit very dark. There's a flashback in the scene. That's why there's these bigger panels here. Some spoilers, of course. But anyway, this is basically the setup. Is this page here? So all right. So interior New Jersey hospital. Resume back to the original Back to the opening scene of Valentine's shadowy shoulder. His mother Madonna is more awake, sits up in a hospital bed and stares down at her covered feet at nothing. She's stunned. She's getting a recap of all the crap that happened in the previous issues. Um, Head and shoulders on Valentine. He watches for a reaction quietly. Madonna begins to focus. This is a shock to the system. What happens now? Panel 2. Tell me about that time, the moment you decided to take me undercover agent for the FBI. Spoilers. I'm assuming you've been reading this stuff. And I'm assuming if you're watching these videos, you're less concerned with spoilers for the story as much as you are the process of making the story. Madonna is stunned and shushes him. This is a family secret not to be spoken out loud. What the fuck? Same panel, just a moment of inspiration. Madonna fidgets, nervous. She doesn't want to talk about the worst memories of her entire life. Madonna, I did. Panel 6, Valentine, no. Told me what and how. And didn't tell me why. Why exactly? Why specifically? So in the scene, they're talking about the concept behind Murder Inc., which is that one of the mafioso's families, this woman, Madonna, has decided that this world has to end the way that it is, and she's setting up her own son to be a mole within the FBI, which he doesn't have any choice in, and now he's stuck and torn between these two worlds. So anyway, as you can tell from reading this is a relatively quiet scene. Again, it'll be a lot of head and shoulders kind of stuff. And I think one of the things I look for now is beats in the scene. Beats are like your bullet points, like if you're writing a paper or something. It's the moments that happen. Somebody saying something, somebody reacting to it. Action can be characters talking, not just physical action. So this is like character action right here. All right, so when I'm reading the script, it feels like the scene kind of turns a bit on panel 4 when Valentine asks her, "Tell me about the moment you decided to make me an undercover agent for the FBI." So there's this sort of there are moments that happen before this, and then there's moments that happen after this, meaning the scene turns at this panel on panel 4. So I'm going to want to put panel 4 at the top on the top right hand side of this page, because basically it'll go like 1, 2, 3, 4, and 4 becomes like a break because your eyes are going from left to right. Then you got panel 4, and this is like a punctuation, and then we'll have 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So that's going to be kind of tough to shove all that into this bottom row, but again, because of the dialogue flow, which is the short back and forths between each other, and the fact that they're in a dark room where there's not anybody else, it's going to be easy, despite the amount of panels down there, to fit all that into these short, tall panels, which also does like a timing thing. A short, tall panel feels very quick, while a wider panel feels like it's taking a longer beat. So I'm just going to lower the opacity on there. I use this pen setting up here. I use because it's light and it's got an opacity to it. What the hell's going on there? Why is that weird? Oh, okay. So create another layer. Normally I like a panel. I'll still try this. So if I have a double page spread, the center of the page, you try to have a panel going across it. Sometimes it'll be self-evident even if there's a panel that's right on the division, because I usually put a pretty thick border between the bottom and the top panel or pages on a double page spread, because it really informs the eye without you having to think about it even, that pages are read like this and then like this. Like if there's a big black border in the middle, you're not going to be tempted for your eye to go down at all. So, but it's still a good idea to have something overlapping these two panels. Um, all right, so what happens in the first 4 panels? One second, I gotta check this. Okay. Panel 1, back at the hospital. I probably want the first panel to be relatively large because we're going back to a scene that we had already established after being away from it for a few panels. So panel 2 is silent. Panel 3. Okay, so 2 and 3, panel 2 and 3 here. So panel 1 be a large establishing panel, large-ish. Panel 2 and 3, Head and Shoulders and Valentine, he watches and reacts quietly. Madonna begins to focus, and then she's back. Same as 2. So 3 and 4, because it's Madonna. Oh no, they all go back and forth. Okay, so I'm just going to do this pretty evenly then. So I'll have panel 1 is a large panel. Panel 2, which is silent, so I really don't have to worry too much about anything. I'll have that overlap a little bit. Panel 3, which is relatively quiet as well. And then panel 4 is this. Panel 4 being that the moment that things really change. So panels 2 and 3 will be enclosed panels. Panel 4 or panel 1 is going to be kind of open because again, it's my establishing shot. I'm just kind of breaking you back into this time period, you know, because we had a flashback just before that. And then panel 4, because it's like a turn in the scene, it's a turn in the beats, it's also going to be open, meaning no immediate panel borders around it. 2 and 3 feel more contained and they're quicker story beats, so those are going to have panel frames around them and they're relatively small. I hope all this makes sense. It makes sense in my head. Anyway. All right, now I need to have 6 panels down at the bottom. None of them are particularly large standout panels or moments like a giant revelation or something shocking. Possibly, I guess, the last panel. Yeah, the last panel is kind of a revelation. Sometimes that works on still being just a small, quiet panel too. If it's that sort of contrast thing. Like you'd expect that last panel, this sort of revelation, to be a large, big shot, which totally works. But sometimes it also works to go the opposite way, as you go small with it. I think I'm going to go small with it on here. Yeah, I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. Okay, so we'll do this. We'll do 4 panels here. So we got 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Let me make sure 8 isn't. Yeah. That's not going to work out yet. Hold on. I still have to be mindful of the gap here. You know, in the trade, it's going to fold. So I don't want any art to really get lost in there. So let's make sure we don't have any art in the middle. But this is going to be tight right here. This will be 4 panels. Okay, so 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. Looking at the way that the dialogue goes here with 9, 10, 11, I want to see what kind of rhythm there is. Brian wants kind of like a pretty much just like a single camera shot going back and forth, or two camera shots going back and forth here. Um, I'm going to slightly break it up though with 8 and 9, 8, 9, and 10. So to kind of build up to this 10 panel, to make it larger. So 9, 10, and 11. So the last panel can be large and breathe. So the rhythm here will be panel 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. That's how I want it to feel, if that makes any sense. I want those panels to feel bigger, like bigger moments than other panels. Let me get rid of my rough thing there. And to lay this out, I'm just gonna use basically like stick figures. Just really rough, what's the word? Just really rough layout figures here. Just to give you the idea and keep this video within a relatively normal speed. Now, to me, it would make sense to repeat this panel. And I think I'm going to do that. I'm going to repeat this panel, but I'm not going to just paste this in because there's a different mood going on here than this panel. But I'm going to keep that in mind. I'm just going to write repeat. But when I repeat it, there'll just be a different mood. I'm going to redraw it. Probably have the same lighting pretty much because of the scene. But yes, I'm just going to repeat this panel, but I'm going to redraw the figures and stuff. Sometimes I'll repeat a panel and it's exactly the same panel, and other times there's just like a minor change. There's different reasons for repeating the panel. In this case, is because even though it's obvious where they're going to be, even if I drew a crazy angle on this, I want something familiar that brings you back in so quickly to the scene that there's not even a moment of hesitation, you know. And that's what would happen if I did a completely different establishing shot for the scene. Is it would take, it's only like a microsecond or so more, but to me, because my work is more based on iconic, simple approaches, I want to have something that's immediately in your mind, immediately takes you back to the last scene that we broke away from for the flashbacks. So panel 2. Head and Shoulders of Valentine, who watches a reaction quietly because he's just told her about all the crazy shit that happened in the last few issues. All right, so I want a shot of Valentine watching his mother, and then a shot of his mother, Madonna, just kind of wide-eyed in shock. And it feels like a good watching panel would be close up on Val. And I want to emphasize his eyes. Maybe I'll even create an artificial light shaft here. I've got him in this weird sort of, he's sort of like leaning into his chair. Proportions are a little off on this, but it doesn't matter. So yeah, the close-up, so we really emphasize his eyes, gives idea that he's really observing her. Panel 3. She just says, "What happens now?" I think there's enough dial, or there's enough space up there. Plus, I'll move it down a little bit just to make sure. I want to give her a slightly more assertive look in here. She's been really confused and out of it, but I think now she's caught up, and she understands shit is gonna happen, but she doesn't really know exactly what her son is up to. And sometimes when I'm drawing, I'll kind of make faces and stuff because either I'm projecting onto the characters, or I'm feeling what they're feeling, or I'm trying to figure out what the expression is going to be. Like in her face here, it's like a concern kind of look like this. So it's like you're looking almost level with the brows, and she's looking up. I guess there's a body language thing there. I don't really have the, you know, um, fucking words in my head right now. I should stop doing these videos first thing when I get up because I don't have the vocabulary. Anyhow, yeah, her body language should look concerned and with it. I don't know if that's happening here or not, but hopefully it is. Panel 4, where things open up more. Tell me about the time you decided to make me an undercover agent for the FBI. I want to draw kind of from her point of view now because it's almost this, he's confronting her on some level with the truth. So I want this to be like a forward shot, but I don't want it to be a shot that's straightforward just to the reader. It's supposed to feel like it's her, her point of view. So I'm going to draw edge of the bed here, bit of her hand. And he's back here. He's leaned back, angled in his seat. His hand is here, but his hand isn't touching her because there's a little distance here. And he's just going to be looking directly at us. Almost accusatory. Accusatory? Accusatory. I'm not sure. I don't have to worry about the backgrounds here because as you saw, it's all black and there's a kind of a reason for that. There's just some lights and stuff. All right, so before I move on, let's examine the beats here, what we've got so far. So basically this wide panel of the hospital bed with him at the end. So it's this kind of wide shot, close-up of his eyes, close-up of her reacting. You pull back with the accusation. So hopefully this is going to feel tight and confined. These will feel more open. Going into the scene, we're turning the scene. So this goes into the scene. The scene turns here. By turn, I mean like the whole mood changes. Everything about it. You're changing the scene. All right, down to panel 5. These are the little quick beats. These could be fun, even though they look horrible because they look like they'll be tough because they're these tall, thin panels. They're going to be fun. They're going to be fun because A, I can get really abstract with it, especially if there's a 2-shot on one of these really tall, thin panels. So that means really tight little negative silhouettes or extreme close-ups. It's going to be more fun than it would seem like to work with these tiny panels. So panel 5, Madonna is stunned and shushes her family. Secret is not to be spoken out loud. What the fuck? Not here. So I'm going to have her kind of leaning forward a little bit, like she sits up in the bed some. A little surprised. What the fuck? And that's all I need. You've seen in the other videos when I go in and I tighten all this up. Right now, these are just sort of like stick figures and breakdowns so that I know. I'm not concentrating on the drawing at all at this point. This is just about the storytelling, which is my favorite part of laying out a page and also the hardest part of laying out pages or drawing pages.